For days after the lavish memorial service Jason organized, Jonathan walked into the room where I'd been hiding with a look more serious than I had ever seen. His eyes, usually calm like a windless sea, seemed to brace for an undercurrent about to swell into a storm. "Mr. Collins," Jonathan said, placing a new stack of files on the table, "we have new information. And it's significant." I looked at the folder. Thicker than any he'd brought before, heavy with something that left Jonathan skipping any greeting or small talk. "Jason's situation," he continued, "is beginning to crack." "Crack?" I leaned forward. Jonathan turned on the large screen. The first image was a video from a meeting at company headquarters. Jason stood presenting to the executive board, composed on the outside, but a hint of strain around his eyes. I saw Emily in the back row, hands clenched together, staring down at the table. A financial director stood and questioned him. "Jason, why are the operating accounts for the yacht division missing the transaction records from last week? You said the system malfunctioned, but our tech team found no errors whatsoever." Jason responded quickly. "They must have checked the wrong time frame. I'll provide another set. We're going through a difficult period, so I ask for your patience." Jonathan paused the video. "These missing statements," he said, "are the altered records Jason used to cover the unauthorized investments he made. And now, the board is demanding comparison with the originals." My heartbeat thudded hard. Finally, pieces were beginning to surface. Jonathan switched to another video, an interview between the insurance team and Captain Carlson. "This is a legally authorized recording," Jonathan said. "We obtained clearance from the Maritime Authority." In the footage, Carlson sat across from two investigators. His shirt wrinkled, his face drawn, dark circles under his eyes. One investigator asked, "Captain, you stated the crew realized Mr. Collins was missing at 2012. But camera footage shows you and Ms. Emily on the upper deck at 2010. How do you explain that?" Carlson looked around, swallowed hard. I was doing a routine check. Ms. Emily was upset about Mr. Collins' headache and stepped out for air. And why did you falsify the time of Mr. Collins' disappearance?" Carlson went silent. A thick, frightened silence. The investigator continued. "You also claimed the GPS malfunctioned because of the storm. But original data shows the system was manually tampered with." Carlson's hands tightened. Then, trembling, he said, "Jason told me to do it. He said if I cooperated, I'd be protected." Jonathan shut the video off. "You see," he said, "Captain Carlson is starting to panic." I nodded slowly. Men like Carlson bend when bribed, but they're always the weakest link when fear enters the room. "Will he reveal everything?" I asked. "Not fully," Jonathan said, "but he's wavering. And when Carlson wavers, Jason's entire structure begins to crumble piece by piece." Jonathan opened another report. "And now," he said, "the most important part is Emily." I exhaled heavily. She was never as strong as Jason. "Exactly," Jonathan replied. "And we've monitored her for the past 4 days. She's in emotional distress." He played footage from the company's internal safety cameras, the kind Jason couldn't disable. Emily sat alone in a small meeting room, hands covering her face, shoulders shaking. She had been crying, clearly for a long time. On the table was a document, what looked like a withdrawal slip. Jonathan zoomed in. "Guarantor, David Collins. Signature, not yours." I stared at the crude forged signature Jason had used, sloppy, nothing like mine. And at that moment, I understood. Emily wasn't a willing conspirator. She'd been dragged into it, and now she was facing the truth. In the video, she whispered, voice trembling, "Why would Jason do this? Dad never gave permission." Then she buried her face in her arms. Jonathan turned off the screen and looked at me. "Mr. Collins, Emily may be the key. Someone like her can't carry the weight of deception for long. You want me to contact her?" I asked. "No, not yet." Jonathan shook his head. "But if we gather enough evidence, Emily will break on her own. And when she talks, this case moves from suspicion to conclusion." I breathed deeply. Emily, my gentle child. I didn't want her hurt, but I also understood that truth demands a cost, even if it wounds both father and daughter. Jonathan placed another file in front of me. "Also," he said, "the Singapore Maritime Authority has joined the investigation. They've required Jason to submit all voyage data, logbooks, GPS positions every 15 minutes, and complete camera archives." How did Jason respond? I asked. Jonathan let out a small, sharp smile, more satisfied than amused. He grew nervous. He claimed the logbook was damaged by seawater, but the inspectors found that pages were torn. Torn, I muttered, jaw tightening. Yes, Jonathan said. And that was when Carlson's fear spiraled. Jason began blaming him publicly, accusing, threatening, and that, more than anything, made the captain want to step away. I understood instantly. Jason showed his true nature when cornered. He sacrificed others to save himself. Once Carlson realized he'd be the first one thrown overboard, he'd talk. Jonathan slid one last file toward me. And this, he said, is the strongest evidence we've found. I opened it. It was an audio transcript from a technical deck radio microphone. Jonathan pointed at the timestamps. 2009, 2010, 20:11. The audio played. Wind whipped fiercely against the mic. Then Jason's voice, clear and calculated. Tonight we finish it. If he wakes up, we lose everything. Goosebumps rippled along my arms. Jonathan played the next part. Emily's voice, shaky. I don't want Dad hurt. Jason, we can't. Jason cut her off. There's no other way. We have to make it look like an accident. Emily, listen, this is the only way to save the company. Jonathan stopped the recording. The air in the room felt frozen. In that moment, I felt pain, fury, and another revelation all at once. Emily resisted. Her heart was still intact, but Jason had none left. Jonathan continued. We've already forwarded this to the authorities. They're drafting summonses for Jason and Carlson. And Emily? I asked. He held my gaze for a long moment before replying. She's a misled party. She'll be treated as a witness, but only if she tells the truth. I turned toward the window. The deep blue sea stretched beyond, peaceful, calm, as if preparing itself for the emotional storm my children were about to face. Jonathan rested his hand on the table. Mr. Collins, Jason is being pushed into a corner. And when someone's desperate to maintain a lie, they make their final mistake. He's about to make that mistake, I said quietly. Jonathan nodded. I believe so. That evening, I sat alone on the porch, warm yellow light falling across the weathered wood table. The sea breeze was gentle, but inside me, storms raged without pause. I thought of Helen. If she knew the truth, it would break her heart. I thought of Emily. She'd been swept into a whirlpool Jason created, too tender-hearted to fight back. And I thought of Jason, the little boy who once chased me along the shore, grinning, saying, Dad, one day I'll take over for you. No one could have predicted that same boy would grow into a man willing to erase his father. My fists tightened. The truth was rising, and when it surfaced, none of them would be able to run from it. On the morning of the 6th day since I had disappeared, a pale band of white waves rolled just offshore from Centaura. A helicopter from the Maritime Authority landed on the pad near the safe house. Jonathan walked into my room with a look that was both grave and faintly satisfied. Mr. Collins, he said, what we've been waiting for has begun. My heart tightened. Jason, he was summoned this morning. Carlson as well. Emily has been called in as a witness. I stood up, my hand instinctively gripping the edge of the table to steady myself. How did it go? Jonathan opened his laptop and pulled up a live broadcast from the authorities. I saw the Maritime building, swarming with reporters outside. He dragged the timeline ahead to the critical moment, Jason's arrival. Jason wore a black suit and dark glasses, walking quickly, but tension showed in his posture. Emily followed behind him, eyes swollen and red, her steps slow, like someone being pulled toward a place she had no wish to enter. Captain Carlson walked beside two officers, head bowed, face ghostly pale. Jason was fairly late, Jonathan said. Probably didn't expect the investigation to escalate like this. He's panicking, I murmured. Jason only feels strong when he's in control. Once he loses control, he doesn't know what to do. Jonathan nodded, as if to confirm my reading of him. The camera cut to the interrogation room. Maritime experts, insurance investigators, and lawyers all present. The audio was clear and official, not a secret recording. That meant one thing. They were applying pressure on purpose. An investigator began with a calm but icy question. Jason Collins, you stated that your father left the medical bay at 20:15 that evening, but the camera data shows you in his room at that time. How do you explain that? Jason hesitated, then forced an answer. I went in to check on him. Was he asleep or awake? Asleep, Jason replied instantly. The investigator looked down at a thick stack of files. But Emily stated she was in the room with your father at 2010, which means you could not have been anywhere near there at that time. Emily flinched, turning toward Jason with a frightened look in her eyes. Jason's lips tightened. The investigator pressed on. And Captain Carlson stated that he discovered your father missing at 2012. 3 people, 3 different times. What? Silence. The air thickened like a noose tightening. Jason said, maybe people misremembered because things were chaotic. The investigator cut in. We've retrieved original footage from the satellite backup system. No one is misremembering anything. We want the truth. Jason swallowed. In the corner of the room, Emily kept her head down, wringing her hands until her knuckles went white. Jonathan paused the video and glanced at me. This is just the beginning. You need to see the rest. He jumped forward to Carlson's separate interrogation, broadcast as well, clearly to keep witnesses from aligning their stories. Carlson sat slumped, looking 10 years older than he had the night before. The investigator played an audio clip, the same technical deck recording Jonathan had played for me earlier. When Jason's voice sounded, we finish it tonight. If he wakes up, we lose everything. Carlson visibly trembled. The investigator asked, do you recognize this voice? Carlson nodded faintly, trying, and failing, to hide the shaking in his face. What did this person ask you to do? Carlson stared down at the table. His jaw clenched, caught between silence and survival. Then he exhaled hard and said, he told me to alter the GPS. So the search would be harder. The room erupted in reaction. The investigator turned up the volume. You admit he told you to change the GPS data? Carlson's voice shook. Yes. He asked you to report a false time for Mr. Collins' disappearance? Yes. What was in the envelope he gave you? Carlson didn't answer right away, but the camera zoomed in. His hands were trembling. The investigator spoke firmly. Captain, this is your last chance to tell the truth. If you keep hiding anything, you'll face full criminal liability. Carlson snapped like a taut string breaking. Money. It was money. He paid me to do it. I pressed a hand to my mouth, not out of surprise, but out of a mixture of pain and anger. Jonathan laid a steadying hand on my shoulder. The next part of the video showed Emily brought in for questioning. I held my breath. She sat facing the investigator, eyes red, her face so drained that I had to look away for a moment. I couldn't bear it. The investigator's tone was gentler now. Clearly they saw she wasn't the mastermind. Miss Collins, where were you at 2010 that evening? Emily clasped her hands together, voice shaking. I was on the upper deck. I didn't mean to lie. Why were you there? Emily pressed her lips together as tears slipped down. She didn't sob loudly. Each drop fell heavy onto the table. I panicked. I didn't want this to happen. Jason told me Dad would be fine, that this was just a way to keep the company from going under. The investigator leaned in slightly. Did you believe him? Emily broke down. No, but I was scared. I didn't know what to do. I didn't want Dad to be hurt. I collapsed back into my chair. That was the Emily I knew. A tender soul. A girl dragged into a tragedy she wasn't strong enough to escape. The investigator handed her a tissue. Miss Collins, he said gently, we don't see you as a criminal, but you must tell the truth. What did Jason ask you to do? Emily choked out. He told me I had to say that Dad left the medical bay to look at the sea, that it was what he loved to do. And the GPS? I don't know anything about GPS. And the $12 million? Emily lifted her head, eyes wide with fear. He used my name to sign. I didn't know that was illegal. The investigators exchanged glances. It was obvious. They had identified Emily as someone manipulated, not a driving force. I exhaled, a small ray of light breaking through this darkness for the first time in days. Jonathan shut the laptop. And finally, he said, there's something we have to tell you. I looked at him, a tightness growing in my chest. What is it? Jonathan handed me an envelope stamped with an official seal. The maritime court has formally declared that David Collins is deceased. I stood motionless. My heart felt as though a drill had gone straight through it. Even though I knew this was coming, the words still hit like a blow. Deceased. I repeated it, my voice hollow. Jonathan spoke slowly. This is a necessary legal step. When you return, It will serve as critical evidence against Jason for false reporting, fraud, and concealing the true cause of your death. I nodded slightly, though my throat was tight. I had died, on paper, before I was ever allowed to prove I was alive. Before Jonathan left, he added, "Tomorrow, the authorities will begin freezing company accounts. Jason and Carlson may be detained. Emily will likely be moved into protected witness status." I asked quietly, "What do you need me to do now?" Jonathan looked at me, eyes steady. "Wait, just a little longer. When every piece of admissible evidence is secured, Mr. Collins will return." I turned toward the sea. The night wind was cold, but my heart was no longer trembling. What Jason had built out of ambition was crumbling beneath his own feet. What Emily had tried so desperately to hide was spilling out like water long held behind a dam. What Carlson thought he could outrun was circling back to tighten around him. As for me, I had died, in the legal sense. But that death would be the foundation for my rebirth, stronger, clearer, and more just. I whispered to myself, to the sea, to the heavens. I will return, and this time, nothing and no one will stop me from telling the truth. When a man is declared dead by the world, the first thing he loses isn't his wealth, nor his reputation. It's the feeling that he still belongs somewhere. I realized that on the 7th morning since I'd been rescued. The sunlight over Centaura Island was warm, yet not warm enough to melt the cold that had settled deep inside me. I sat alone by the window, staring at the endless stretch of blue sea. It was beautiful, but to me, its beauty felt like mockery, because the ocean had become the place where the world believed I had drowned. From the moment the court signed my death certificate, I no longer existed in society's eyes. I became a closed chapter, a name stamped finished, a man erased from the civil registry, from my company's boardrooms, from my own family. And that feeling shook me in a way nothing in my life ever had, despite all the storms I'd weathered. I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes. The more tightly I closed them, the sharper the images became, like film reels spinning in reverse. I saw myself at 30, young, stubborn, reckless. I saw Helen when she was still young, long hair, steady eyes, the woman who stood beside me as we built the foundation of our resort empire. I remembered the evenings when we stood on the beach, and I told her, "One day, I'll give you a beautiful place. A place with sun, wind, the sea, and just us." Helen believed me. She always did. I remembered Jason's birth, my first child, into whom I poured not only love, but also expectations. I lifted him in my arms, looking into those bright eyes like sunlight on water, and I thought, this boy will grow up to be remarkable. He'll inherit my dream. Maybe that thought itself was my first mistake. I spoiled Jason too much. I wanted him to have everything I never had, to grow up without struggle or scarcity. I didn't want him to know the pain I'd known. But sometimes, having everything is the worst thing for a child. Jason grew up surrounded by abundance, power, admiration from employees, clients, shareholders. I unknowingly built a golden cage around him, one that looked like privilege but was really a pair of invisible shackles. And now, that boy I once admired, once believed in, had been the one to push me toward death. I opened my eyes and took a deep breath. My disappointment in Jason was heavy and sharp, like a wound that would never fully heal. But beneath that pain was something even deeper. Helen. I imagined the moment she received the news that I had fallen into the sea. Imagined her standing before the press, holding my picture with trembling hands. I didn't need to rewatch the recordings. I knew exactly how deeply she must have hurt. Helen didn't just lose a husband. She lost the partner who had walked beside her for more than 40 years. What broke my heart wasn't that she believed I was dead. It was that I never got to say a final word to her before leaving that ship. If I had truly died that night, Helen would spend the rest of her life haunted. Because she had warned me. Because she had sensed something I arrogantly ignored. I whispered under my breath, "Helen, I'm sorry." I lowered my head, hands clasped together. In the days recovering on Centaura, I'd had more time than ever to reflect. Not as a powerful chairman, but as a man who had lost his family in the most unexpected way. I thought of Emily. I had always seen her as gentle, kind, drawn to art and community work. Emily wasn't ambitious like Jason. She never sought power. I used to think, if Jason inherited the company, Emily would be the heart of the family. But I was wrong. Wrong to think softness guarantees safety. Wrong to assume her innocence would remain untouched by the world. During her interrogation footage, when she trembled, when she cried, when she said she didn't want any of it, my heart felt crushed. Emily didn't betray me out of desire. She did it out of fear, out of desperation, out of being dragged into something too big for her to resist. Jason was her older brother, the anchor she'd always trusted. And when she panicked, she clung to him rather than her conscience. And the fault was mine. I never taught Emily how to face pressure. Never taught her that kindness alone can't protect anyone without strength behind it. I sheltered her too much, so much that she couldn't stand when the world shoved her. Looking back now, I realize I raised two children with opposite imbalances. Jason too ambitious, Emily too fragile. And both were the result of my choices as a father. I shut my eyes again, feeling the pain rise within me. If I could do it again. But life doesn't offer rewinds, only the chance to make things right. And the only thing I could do now was return. Not for revenge, but to face what I myself had shaped. Jonathan entered the room. Seeing my expression, he didn't speak immediately. He stood by the door for a while before saying, "Mr. Collins, you're still thinking about your family." I gave a faint, weary smile. I never stopped. Jonathan sat down across from me. "You know, anyone in your position would feel the same kind of pain. But not everyone has the courage to look inward the way you do." I asked quietly, "Do you believe I still have a chance to fix all this?" Jonathan thought for several seconds. "Yes, but not in the way you used to." I looked at him, waiting. Not through power struggles. Not by proving you're stronger than your children. But by using the truth and the right choices to pave the way for the most just ending. I exhaled slowly. "Mr. Hill, I used to think I was a good father. Now I realize I failed where it mattered most." Jonathan smiled gently, without judgment. "No parent is perfect, but you're still alive, which means you still have the chance to change the outcome." I didn't answer. The sea breeze drifted through the window, carrying a cool, salty scent, something that felt strangely like hope. Finally, I said, "Prepare for the day I return, Jonathan. But before I return to the world, I need to return to myself." Jonathan nodded. I stepped outside onto the porch, gazing far across the ocean, toward the place where everything began and where I had almost ended. That night, I understood one thing. To finish this war, I had to confront my own heart, before I could face my two children. When a man is declared dead by the world, the first thing he loses isn't his wealth or his reputation. It's the feeling that he still belongs somewhere. I realized that on the 7th morning after I had been rescued, the sunlight over Centaura Island was warm, but it couldn't thaw the cold weight inside my chest. I sat alone by the window, staring at the endless stretch of blue water. It was beautiful, but to me, that beauty felt like mockery, because the ocean had become the place the world believed I had sunk into forever. From the moment the court stamped my death certificate, I officially stopped existing in the eyes of society. I was a man whose record had been closed, whose name had been marked final, a man erased from public files, from my company, even from my own family. And that feeling shook me in a way no storm in my life ever had. I leaned back in the chair, closing my eyes. But the more I closed them, the clearer the memories became, like old film reels replaying in the dark. I saw myself at 30, young, stubborn, burning with ambition. I saw Helen when she was still young, long hair, steady eyes, the woman who stood beside me as we built our seaside empire from nothing. I remembered the afternoons we stood on the beach together, waves curling around our feet, when I told her, "One day, I'm going to build you something beautiful, a place with sun, wind, and the ocean, and it'll be just ours." Helen believed me. She always believed me. I remembered when Jason was born, my first child, the boy I poured all my hope into. I lifted him in my arms, looking into those bright eyes that shimmered like sunlight on the waves, and I thought, this boy will grow up to be extraordinary. He will inherit everything I've dreamed of. Maybe that was where the mistake began. I spoiled Jason. I gave him every advantage, every comfort, every luxury I had never known growing up. I didn't want him to struggle the way I did. But in doing that, I forgot something. Not everything handed to a child is good for him. Jason grew up surrounded by abundance, power, admiration, from employees, clients, shareholders. Without noticing, I built a golden cage around him, one I thought was privilege, but was really a trap. And now, that boy, the one I once lifted on my shoulders, had become the man who pushed me to the edge of death. I opened my eyes, taking a hard breath. The disappointment, no, the heartbreak I felt toward Jason was sharp, deep, and raw. But beneath all that, another pain twisted harder. Helen. I imagined the moment she received the news I had fallen into the sea. I imagined her standing before reporters, hands trembling as she held my photograph. I didn't need Jonathan's updates to know how much she hurt. I knew Helen better than anyone. What destroyed me was not that she believed I was dead. What destroyed me was knowing I didn't get to say one last thing to her before leaving that ship. If I had actually died that night, Helen would have carried that guilt for the rest of her life. Because she warned me, because she sensed something was wrong, and I brushed it aside. Helen, I'm sorry, I whispered into the quiet room. I bowed my head, my hands clasped tightly together. During my days of recovery on Centaura, I had more time than ever to face myself, not as a powerful chairman, but as a man who had lost his family in the most devastating way. I thought of Emily, my gentle, soft-hearted daughter, who preferred art and community projects over boardrooms and numbers. Emily never cared for power. She was supposed to be the heart of the family. Yet I failed her too. In the investigation video, watching her tremble, watching her cry, say she never wanted any of this, it tore something inside me. Emily didn't betray me out of malice. She did it out of fear, out of confusion, out of being dragged into something she didn't know how to fight. Jason was her older brother, the person she had relied on since childhood. When everything fell apart, she listened to the only anchor she knew, and the fault was mine. I never taught Emily how to face pressure. I never taught her that kindness alone can't protect anyone, not without courage behind it. I kept her sheltered for too long, until she didn't know how to stand when the world pushed back. Now I saw it clearly. I had raised two children with two different extremes. Jason, too ambitious. Emily, too fragile. And both were shaped by the blind spots in my parenting. I closed my eyes again, pain flickering through me. If I could do it all over again. But the world never gives us a chance to do it over. It only gives us a chance to fix what remains. And the only thing I could do now was return, not to take revenge, but to confront the consequences of my own making. Jonathan walked in quietly, stopping when he saw my expression. He didn't speak at first. Then he approached and said gently, "Mr. Collins, you're still thinking about your family." I let out a weary sigh. I've never stopped. Jonathan sat across from me. Most people in your place would feel nothing but anger or bitterness. But you're willing to look inward. That tells me you're not just trying to survive. You're trying to understand. I asked, "Do you think I still have a chance to save what's left?" Jonathan paused, thoughtful. "Yes, but not the way you used to. Not through power. Not through proving you're stronger than your son, but through truth, and through choosing the right path to bring this to a just end." I breathed out slowly. "Jonathan, I used to believe I was a good father. Now I'm not so sure. Maybe I failed at the one place that mattered most." He didn't judge. He simply offered a quiet, reassuring smile. "No parent is perfect, but you're still alive, and that means you still have the chance to change the ending." I stepped outside onto the porch, the ocean stretching endlessly before me. The breeze was cool, carrying a faint saltiness, a feeling that reminded me strangely of hope. "Prepare for the day I return, Jonathan," I said softly. "But before I return to the world, I need to return to myself first." He nodded. I stood there, watching the horizon, the place where everything began, and where I had almost ended. And that night, I finally understood. If I wanted to finish this war, I had to start by facing my own heart, before facing the two children I once thought I knew. If anything truly changes a person, it isn't time, it's pressure. Jason and Emily grew up under the same roof, but the weight each carried was so different that it eventually drove them down opposite paths. Sitting alone, looking at everything from a distance, I realized the tragedy didn't start the night I fell in the engine room. It began years ago, slowly, quietly, growing like a crack beneath the surface. During the days waiting for the investigation to unfold, Jonathan delivered stacks of notes gathered by the monitoring team, transcripts, psychological assessments, tense statements. I didn't want to look at them, but I had to. If I intended to repair anything, I needed to understand how my children had lost their way. Tonight, Jonathan placed another file in front of me, labeled in neat handwriting. Psychological profile, witness number 2, Emily Collins. I took a deep breath. In the report, the specialist asked Emily about the weeks leading up to the cruise. The first answer pierced me straight through. "Emily," the interviewer asked gently, "were you under any pressure before the incident happened?" Emily sat upright, fingers laced tightly, her old habit when she was anxious. "Yes, the financial trouble with the yacht division." "What kind of trouble?" Emily bit her lip, the exact way Helen used to whenever she had to speak a hard truth. "Jason told me, if we didn't deal with it soon, the company could lose almost everything. I don't really understand finance, but he said the investment he pursued was going very badly. Did you talk to your father about it?" Emily lowered her head. "I did, but Jason said I shouldn't worry Dad. He'd just finished a health check. He needed rest. So I trusted Jason." I clenched my hands. Emily had always trusted her brother. All these years. She wasn't a traitor. She was someone who placed her trust in the wrong person. The interviewer continued. "Emily, why did you sign the guarantee for the loan?" Emily's face tightened, as if someone had squeezed her heart. "Because Jason said it was only temporary paperwork. I didn't know. I didn't know it would lead to all of this." Then she broke down, quietly, trying to hold herself together. "I didn't even understand what those numbers meant. I thought I was helping my brother with something small." I turned my face away. So Emily never truly understood what Jason was doing. She was weak, and sometimes weakness is more dangerous than greed. When I finished Emily's file, I thought I was prepared to read Jason's. I was wrong. Jonathan placed the second file before me, thicker, heavier, darker. Psychological profile, witness number 1, Jason Collins. Jonathan's voice was almost gentle. "You should read this, so you understand what has been happening inside your son." I opened the first page. The opening lines chilled me to the bone. Jason shows signs of prolonged stress. The expectations of his family and the company have created a mindset of he must succeed at all costs. At all costs. Those two words cut deeply. I understood suddenly. Jason wasn't just greedy. He was terrified. Terrified of failing. Terrified of disappointing me. Terrified of not living up to the perfect heir image I had unknowingly carved into his life. I read on. He believes he is the only one capable of saving the company. He believes his father is too old to keep up. He believes his father doesn't understand the new risks of the market. Jason, my son, the boy I thought would succeed as long as I gave him the best tools. Perhaps it was those very tools that convinced him he was the only one who could be right. In an interview recording, Jason said, "My father relies too much on intuition. I rely on reality. The company would collapse if I didn't act decisively." The investigator asked, "What kind of decisiveness?" Jason paused before answering. "The kind where he never finds out what I did." I closed my eyes, forcing myself to breathe. Jason continued, trying to justify himself. "I didn't mean to hurt him. I just wanted him to rest, without carrying the debt. A natural death would make everything look cleaner." When that sentence played, the room felt colder. "Jason," I murmured, "what were you thinking?" Jonathan spoke quietly. "You see it now. Jason doesn't view situations emotionally. To him, every choice is a calculation." But I couldn't hate him entirely. Pain outweighed anger. Jason had once been the boy who clung to my leg on the beach. The child who proudly showed me his test scores. The young man who said he wanted to inherit my legacy. But between expectation, indulgence, and a perfectionism that hardened into sickness, my son had transformed. From a talented young man into someone willing to commit something unthinkable just to keep everything from slipping away. No one is born corrupt, but anyone can be swallowed by darkness if no one pulls them back in time. And I, his father, had not pulled him back. In another excerpt, the investigator asked Jason, "Did you ever think about telling your father the truth?" Jason laughed, a dry, hollow sound. "What for? He would only see me as a failure. He never failed. He's always strong. How could I tell someone like that I burned through $12 million? The investigator pressed. "What scares you more, failure or something else?" Jason didn't hesitate. Disappointing him. I sank into my chair. I finally understood. I was the reason Jason never dared admit his mistakes. For years, I had been too strong, too flawless in his eyes. Even one crack was enough to make him feel like he was standing on a cliff. pressure had hollowed out his humanity. He loved me, but in a twisted way. He thought removing me was a way to protect my legacy. He never understood. I didn't need the empire I built to live forever. I just needed my children to live decently. At the end of the file, the investigator asked, "If you could go back, would you choose differently?" Jason didn't answer at first. His silence stretched so long it felt like the entire room was holding its breath. Then he whispered, "I don't know anymore. I'm tired. I never wanted things to turn out like this." It was the first time I heard Jason speak in that tone since the whole nightmare began. Not cold, not calculated, but exhausted, and buried beneath it, remorse. Even if only a little. I closed the file and exhaled slowly. Jonathan watched me carefully. "You all right?" I nodded, my voice rough. No one is all right after seeing their child standing at the edge of a cliff like this. Jonathan asked quietly, "What will you do when you see Jason again?" I looked out at the sea, its surface glowing with the soft gold of the setting sun, like a shining wound. "I'll tell him. I never needed a perfect son. I only needed a son who knew how to come back." Jonathan didn't speak. He understood. In the end, beneath the crimes, the lies, the heartbreak, there remained a truth deeper than all of it. No child sets out to become a villain. Only a child who doesn't know what to do with fear. I stood and stepped out onto the porch. The ocean wind brushed across my face, salty, cold, but sharp enough to keep my mind clear. I whispered, "Jason, Emily, I'm still here, and I'm not leaving you behind." The day I came back wasn't a stormy day, or a day when the sea raged. On the contrary, the sky was strangely clear, as if the whole universe had gone quiet, waiting for an ending no one could quite foresee. Jonathan brought me in a discreet car straight to the administrative center where Jason, Emily, and Carlson were meeting with the authorities. Helen had also been asked to come, in her role as next of kin of the deceased. A phrase so heavy it felt like a punch to my chest. On the drive over, I didn't say a word. Neither did Jonathan. He understood that what was about to happen was no longer just a matter of law. It was a matter of the heart, of family, of ties that had been torn and were now fragile, yet still in desperate need of mending. The government building shone bright in the sunlight. People walked in and out as if it were just another day, but inside, I knew a different kind of storm was waiting for me. Jonathan led me to a private hearing room, a soundproof space, sealed off, with only a few people authorized to enter. I stopped a few steps from the door. My heart pounded so hard I could hear each beat, not because I was afraid, but because I didn't yet know how I was going to face my children. Jonathan placed a hand on my shoulder. "It's time, Mr. Collins." I nodded slowly. There was no turning back now. When the door opened and I stepped through, it felt as if the world stopped. Helen stood in a corner of the room, clutching a silk scarf of mine, the one I'd given her for our 30th anniversary. Jason sat to the left of the table, arms locked across his chest, eyes sharp but drained. Emily sat beside him, her face drawn, eyes swollen as if she'd cried all night. Captain Carlson was at the far end, head bowed so low it almost touched his chest, unable to look at anyone. The moment I walked in, the room fell completely silent. Helen turned first. For several seconds, she didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't speak, as if her mind hadn't yet caught up with what her eyes were seeing. Then, the scarf slipped from her hands to the floor. Helen raised a hand to her mouth, her eyes widening, tears rushing up so fast I never thought I'd see that break in such a strong woman. "David?" Her voice was hoarse, small, trembling like that of a frightened child. I took a few steps toward her. "It's me, Helen." She didn't rush into my arms right away. She froze in the middle of the room, lips quivering before she finally broke into a sob that was so contained it hurt to hear. You're alive, you're alive." When she finally ran into my arms and clung to me, I felt as if I'd come home after a long, dark dream. Helen cried against my chest, her shoulders shaking uncontrollably. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "For all of it. I'm sorry." Helen shook her head in my arms. No, it's not your fault. I knew. I always knew. But that was only the beginning of what we had to face. When she released me, Jason was still sitting rigid in his chair, his face utterly drained, his eyes wide with naked horror. Emily burst into tears immediately. "Dad, you're alive. Dad." She shot halfway to her feet, but didn't dare run to me. The weight of guilt pinned her in place. I spoke, my voice unsteady but clear. "Emily." She clenched her fists, tears streaming down, but still stepped back a little. I'm sorry. I didn't mean. I never wanted this." I moved toward her and laid a hand gently on her shoulder. "Emily, I know you were pulled into something too big for you." I looked into her eyes. "I was never angry with you." Emily broke down, collapsing into my arms, trembling like the little 5-year-old who once clung to me, afraid of getting lost. I held her, my heart aching and relieved at the same time. But Jason was the true test. He still sat there, hands gripping so tightly his knuckles had turned white. The arrogance was gone. So was the defiance. All that remained was fear. Jonathan stepped back, giving me space to face my son on my own. I looked at Jason for a long time, as if seeing the entire span of his life all at once. He spoke first. "Dad," just one word, small, weak, and full of guilt. I sat down across from him. "Jason." He lowered his head. "Dad, you were supposed to die." Not an apology, but a bare, brutal truth dropped into the middle of the room. Emily sobbed behind me. Helen clapped a hand over her mouth. Jonathan stood still, watchful. I answered, my voice strangely calm. "Jason, you can tell the truth. This is the one place you no longer need to lie." Jason drew in a long, shaky breath. When he looked up, his eyes were bloodshot. I didn't do this because I hated you. I did it because I was scared." I remained silent, letting him speak. "Scared of disappointing you. Scared you'd see me as a failure. Scared I'd ruin everything you spent your life building. I thought, if you weren't here, all of that would go away." He gave a short, cracked laugh, his eyes blurring. "I was wrong. I know that now." Something heavy inside me seemed to collapse, heavy with grief, with pity, and, in a strange way, with release. "Jason," I said quietly, "I never needed you to be perfect. I just needed you to be honest. Do you know what hurts me most about all this?" He shook his head, lips trembling. "It's that you never said, 'Dad, I made a mistake.' If you'd said those words, everything might have been different." Jason bowed his head, tears hitting the table. "I'm sorry, Dad. I'm so sorry." It was the first time in my life I had ever heard Jason say those words and know they came from the very bottom of his heart. Helen stepped closer, standing behind me. Emily moved to Jason's side, clutching his sleeve as if afraid he might crumble. I sighed. "But, I'm sorry isn't enough, Jason. You have to take responsibility." Jason nodded hard, tears still pouring. "I know. I'm ready. I won't run anymore." In that instant, I saw again the boy who once ran along the shore beside me, lost, frightened, but now trying to stand on his own under the weight of his own choices. Captain Carlson rose to his feet, shaking. "Mr. Collins, I'm sorry too. I did things I shouldn't have done. I know. I was wrong. I didn't hate him anymore." When a man stands at the edge of a cliff, his courage often crumbles. But the fact that he could admit it now, that alone set him apart. I nodded slightly. "Each of us makes our choices, Captain, and each choice has its consequence." Jonathan spoke up. "From here, the legal process will take over. But as for the family, that's up to you." I looked at Jason and Emily. My 2 children. One too hard, one too soft. Both shaped by my own mistakes. I drew in a deep breath. Jason, Emily. They looked up, eyes wet, as fragile as when they were children. From today on, there will be no more hiding in this family. No more lies. No more letting fear make our decisions. I placed my hand over Helen's. And we start over. Not to forget, but to correct ourselves. Helen gripped my hand tightly, tears still falling, but now they carried relief. Emily began to cry again. Jason bowed his head once more, but this time, not out of fear, out of acceptance. Jonathan quietly left the room, giving us space. In all my years, I had never known silence like that. So painful, and yet so warm. Afterward, as the afternoon sun dipped lower, I stepped out into the hallway, looking at its lights spilling across the tall panes of glass. Helen slipped her arm through mine. "Do you think everything will really be all right?" she asked softly. I squeezed her hand. "No one can know for sure, but for the first time, I feel our family actually has a real chance." Helen leaned her head lightly against my shoulder. I looked out toward the distant sea, the place where I was supposed to have been buried. But instead, I'd been given a second chance, not to rebuild an empire, not to seek revenge, but to become the man, the father I should have been long ago. I whispered, to myself, to Helen, and to the sea. There's no such thing as a perfect ending, but there are new beginnings born from our mistakes, and that's what truly matters.
This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your precious time. If you enjoyed this story, then please make sure you subscribe to this channel. See you again.